Welcome to Weekend Life. I'm Susan Ng, and this is Family Ties. Thank you for joining me today as we talk about marriages, families, communication, relationships, so many things to talk about. You know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, and particularly during Circuit Breaker, we've heard of families who've gone through many challenges. There have been lots of stressors during this time. Couples have had to work from home. Children would have had to work from home as well. They've had to study from home. And of course, they had to be with parents, sometimes in smaller, confined spaces, and they couldn't step out. And on top of that, some families would have extended members who live with them as well. So how has Circuit Breaker, COVID-19, the stresses of everyday life impacted work, family life, marriage? We'll talk about some of these, the challenges, with my guests today. And they're also going to share with us how they managed to grow their marriage during this difficult season. Simon and Lillian Xiao join me today here on Family Ties. Simon, Lillian, thank you for making time and welcome.
Hi there.
Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi. Okay, thank you so much for making time. You know, Circuit Breaker, COVID-19, you guys, I understand, work together in the same global nonprofit organization.
That's right.
Okay, so that's one more thing to talk about. You work together, you live together, you've been married for 24 years, you have 3 teenage children. And COVID-19 has really perhaps thrown a spanner in the works. You aren't able to go out of your home, leave the country, and you've had to work and live in really close proximity. There are 5 of you, immediate family members. Talk to me, first of all, Lillian, how it's worked out for you. Have you had to feel very switched on all the time at home?
Yes, actually. Yeah, so, you know, because we've been already working from home before COVID. So when COVID started, actually our workload increased quite a bit because, you know, we are in the digital field. So that was pretty stressful for us. Yeah, you're right. It just turned on all the time. And because we work with a global organization, so we work with different time zones. So it's kind of like, yeah, we don't really have a 9-to-5 job. Yeah, it's kind of anytime, 24 hours. Yeah.
Why do you feel you need to be switched on all the time?
I think at the beginning, we were responding to a lot of needs. A lot of people were asking for help, especially from our organization. And yeah, how do they, you know, or pivot to working, you know, doing work online? And there were a lot of requests for help. So we were kind of like the helpline, responding to a lot of these needs. Yeah.
You were switched on for work. Were you switched on for home life too?
Home life, actually, honestly, not so much. Even though we had our kids, you know, home with us, but they're older. So they were also, I guess, you know, trying to cope with, home-based learning. But because they're older, so they didn't really need a lot of our time. It was more just, spending meal times together to talk through the adjustments that they were going through.
And that's the word, isn't it? Adjustments. Everyone has had to adjust to a new way of working, a new way of living, a new way of being with people. I mean, it's great. You have children, you love them, you know, but sometimes 24/7 in close proximity, particularly if they're quite young, can be quite taxing. How has all of this affected you, Simon?
Yeah, I think the changes, as you said, Susan, you know, the adjustments to a different way of working, although we've been doing work from home, it's increased, and then we've had the rhythm change. I used to travel quite a fair bit, and now that I'm not traveling, it was good for the first part to be homebound for a bit, and then it got a little, you can say, you know, like too routine. And I've enjoyed getting out and making connections and traveling, you know, to meet people and to serve others. But then now I'm stuck, and I've got to do it all in a virtual sense. And that made it pretty challenging. Yeah.
You know, you work with people all over the world because of the type of work that you do. Have you found that other people across the globe have been feeling the same way? You know, cabin fever will set in after a while, Simon. You probably are still feeling it now. And, you know,
That's
hoping
true.
at some point it will be safe enough for you to go out there. But having less space, maybe, you know, having to adjust to each other, to routines, to life, and then you've got to juggle all kinds of responsibilities, and the boundaries blur, don't they, after a while? How has this put extra stress on your marriage? Or has it? Or maybe it hasn't.
It has, I think, certainly. Yeah, I think being home more, it makes the mess at home more obvious. So
I understand that.
And, you know, as you're saying, like having the children home, they are also feeling the stress of just being with everyone all the time. And one of the stresses for us, you know, as a couple is that, the stress around the house, because when we moved back from the US 4 years ago, we haven't been able to clear out the storeroom. So we still have things sitting around the house because we have no storage space. Yeah, and seeing that every day, you know, because we're working, whether we're, you know, with the family, it just created a lot more stress for Simon. And, you know, that became a source of annoyance and frustration for him. And so we actually had a few, you know, conflicts and arguments just because of that frustration that was building up in him. And then not being able to get out, you know, not being able to do much about moving stuff out of the home. Yeah, that didn't really help us, you know, in the situation.
Yeah, it is difficult, isn't it? And we're talking about being in close proximity and being annoyed with stuff that you can't put away. Lillian, I do understand that absolutely, totally. And also frustration. Like I said, you know, we love our children. We love each other very much. But sometimes too much of a good thing isn't really a very good thing, is it? How do you cope, Simon, with all of this, when you see all the stuff?
Yeah, you know, a quick one about the annoyance. I discovered that, you know, the annoyance, sometimes it's directed at others. I found that actually I get annoyed with myself, you know, like I really want to be better. I really want to not react this way, but I am. And it is coming to the surface and I feel bad about it, you know, so. But then you have to, you know, you still have to deal with that, right? How do I cope with it? Yeah, I think we've found that one of the things that we've been trying to be intentional is create space, allow space for each other. So, you know, I'm not just talking about physical space. That's one thing we've got to overcome, right? You know, who's going to work in the office, who's going to use the bedroom to take the calls, and we have calls together, but we have also calls that are separate. But apart from that, we give space to each other to do their own thing, right? My wife enjoys doing puzzles, so she would go to her puzzles sometimes in between calls just to de-stress. And I like to do, you know, other things, or, you know, just kind of chill a little bit, and, you know, not to be with each other all the time, or just giving room for one another to be individuals. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? That's a good point, isn't it? That we cannot expect to be with each other all the time. I suppose day zero of the marriage, that's exactly how you feel, right? We'll spend every moment together. And then we realize, no, we can't, because we do have to be individuals as well, because only when you have your own maybe puzzles that you want to put together, you de-stress, you come back, only when two individuals who are happy with themselves, about themselves and the things around them, can they then make each other and their families happy? And I wonder how you identify when each is stressed out. We'll come back and join that conversation in just a moment. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us here on Family Ties on CNA 938. Simon and Lillian Xiao are talking with me today. So here's that question. How do you know when the other is annoyed? How do you know the other person is stressed out? And do you keep those feelings to yourself? Sometimes people do that, don't they? For example, Simon, if you know Lillian is really stressed because there's that box she's been wanting to clear up for the last 2 months and she hasn't gotten around to it, she's angry. Do you stay away? Do you not say anything? Lillian, is this the same for you? Let's start with you, Lillian. Do you say something? And how do you know if Simon's angry? And what do you do about it?
Yeah. So he's usually very patient. So I know when I know he's stressed when he starts becoming more edgy and more reactive to comments or to the others in the house. So I would normally not talk to him right away. I would usually just give him some space, give him some time to cool down and observe if it's gonna de-escalate or if it's going to escalate. And if it really does get worse, then I would try and find a time when he's calm to talk to him and ask him what's going on. Do you need my help? And because I know his frustration with the mess in the house, I start cleaning. When he's stressed, I start cleaning.
Oh, I like that. When he's stressed, you start cleaning. That's not a bad thing. Simon.
Yeah, I think we've known each other so long, so we can kind of sense when things are a little bit amiss, and we've also made it a commitment to check in with each other often, throughout the day. If not throughout the day, at least before we go to bed, like, how's your day been? We don't do it, as often as we could, but we try to make that happen often so that we catch it quick. I think one of the things that I've discovered is I've got to be intentional to bring my emotions, especially my fears, into relationship. And that's been something that I've been, it's a key piece that I discovered, that it's instead of isolating and say, I'll figure it out myself, I'm frustrated, but I'll just resolve it and then I'll be fine. But she is so precious to me and this relationship is important. So I need to bring that anxiety or that fear into that relationship. And that usually, changes the tone and it actually builds our marriage. Yeah.
Are you always so calm, Simon? Do you ever just lose it?
Yeah, wow, you ask pretty tough questions. I actually am pretty calm most of the time, but when so this period with the pandemic, it really brought up some things that I'm like, wow, I actually have some stuff, stuffed away, that I didn't want to admit to it, but I think my friends and family would know me as like I'm cheerful, I'm a happy person, I don't seem like the angry type. But then lo and behold, during this period, it's like, why am I angry? Then you talked earlier about adjustments, right? The reality is that we're not just dealing with adjustments, we're dealing with grief and loss. We're losing things that we don't want to lose, right? Whether it's the privilege to go out or to travel or to do things. But we are not grieving about it, and we're just like, So it's all inside. And of course, there's other stuff that I have to deal with myself, so that's coming to the surface now. Yeah.
We've got to take a break very shortly, but I would like to get this in with you, Lillian. Do you sometimes just lose it? I mean, you know what? Forget it. Let's just let it all out there and yell at Simon sometimes. Are you both really so calm all the time?
No.
I'm in awe of you already, but I kind of need to know there's a crack in there somewhere. Not that I'm wishing for it, but do you sometimes just lose it?
Yeah, yes, I do actually. So I think it's it's been better now with the kids being older. But my kids will tell you that mommy can be quite explosive,
Yeah.
especially when I'm frustrated. Yeah,
and sometimes I think we need that, don't we? We'll come back and talk more about this, but I think sometimes all this calmness is great. I'm not wishing you guys to go out and have a fight after this, but I just think sometimes you've just got to let it out, and I think you'll understand each other, because Simon, you said there earlier that you've known each other for so long, and I'm wondering, because you know each other for so long, you don't have to be so extra polite with one another. However, you don't want to go out and have a fight either, but you do need to get things out in the open and clear things up. So let's talk more about this and the importance of sharing these meaningful conversations. You're on Family Ties. I'm Susan Ng. Together with me today is Simon and Lillian Xiao. Stay with us and you can connect with us in the usual way. Welcome back to Family Ties on Weekend Life. I'm Susan Ng. Thank you for staying with us. Simon and Lillian Xiao, they've been married for 24 years. They have 3 teenage children. They're still trying to unpack boxes from the time they came back to Singapore about 4 years ago. I totally understand what you're going through, and so do many people, because other things take precedence, don't they? Something else more important comes up. When it comes to our relationship, that happens too, doesn't it? You want to say something, talk about something, I think we need to fix this, but something else more important comes along, and then we forget, and then things build up, and then you, Simon, you, Lillian, you decide, well, you know what, let's not say anything. Let's not rock the boat. Let's not make things harder than it already is, because, as you said earlier, the stresses of COVID-19 are real. The challenges remain very real for many people in Singapore and all around the world. And we've seen many surveys done, research pieces. They've shown that there are more couples seeking counseling during this time than ever before. We've talked about issues where couples do need to decide to live apart, to separate, to divorce. We've talked about family violence and things like that. So in times of stress, however, I think the upside, and you've spoken of many upsides, right? You've discovered perhaps a new sides of each other. Some people have gone into the kitchen and suddenly have become Martha Stewarts overnight. It's like, wow, I never knew you could cook. So let's talk about this. When you are in situations like that, you can go either way, couldn't you? Now, you said something that was very important earlier, Simon. You said you've known each other for so long. You know the phrase, familiarity breeds contempt, yeah? But it could also, familiarity, make things a lot easier because you know each other so well. Which is it for either of you, Simon? Is it easier for you to talk to Lillian because you've known her for so long?
I think for me, yes. Yeah, so it is double-edged sword, right? Kind of where it's true, you kind of get too familiar, but the familiarity does, kind of welcome me to say, let's press in. So I think the challenge for me is that I have to make the choice. Do I want to press in to say, let's, work this out, let's talk about this, even though it's kind of awkward or uncomfortable, particularly for me sometimes as a start. I might not even want to begin the conversation, but I know that it has a high chance of a good outcome if we are both listening to one another and allowing each other to the space to process that emotion or whatever we are facing.
That's a good point, yeah. Giving each other the space and the time. Sometimes it's not easy to do that. And so talking about conversations and familiarity, Lillian, sometimes people do need to get things off their chest, and I'm sure you've met many couples and families for which meaningful conversations remain something to attain, and it's very hard to do that. Talk about you and Simon. How do you do it? How do you make it work?
I think it's really about intentionality, and there often there's that fear, right, of rejection. That okay, I don't know if I'm going to get through. I don't know if he's going to understand where I'm coming from. And sometimes it's just that self-talk, like we kind of persuade ourselves not to step into that conversation. But it's also the self-talk to say, okay, I this relationship is important to me, and I need to, resolve this in order to also, grow that relationship, and not allow that to become a block in our marriage, and being willing to press in, like Simon said. So I think let me just share a story that happened during COVID. So we had a few actually really big fights during COVID. And during one of those sessions, because through the years we've learned that in order to, before we can resolve our conflicts, we need to give each other that time to cool down, and not just, try to resolve it there and then. So after this one big fight, I went out of the house. I went for a long walk just to, work out the frustration. And then when I came back, wow, I went into the bedroom and it looked really great. So I knew he had been cleaning. But then the funny thing was, my son said, yeah, Daddy was cleaning aggressively. So I knew he was also releasing his frustration in the room. But I think what was a breakthrough in our marriage that happened that day was that we decided, after we were both calm, that okay, let's talk. Let's just really, sit down and listen to each other. And throughout that conversation, I remember I had to keep telling myself, just okay, don't react, just listen. I had to keep literally every few seconds remind myself, okay, don't react, just listen. And there was really a breakthrough. I think I finally understood his emotions, like why he was feeling so frustrated about, the mess in the house, which I had always dismissed because, it's just mess, but we finally understood that, okay, his level of comfortableness with the mess in the house was different from mine. So, to me, it was fine, but to him, it wasn't. So I think that, after 24 years of marriage was a breakthrough, even through such a small thing. Yeah.
Okay, and that's an important point too. You realize this after 24 years of being married. And sometimes we need that release, don't we? Whether it's a long walk or cleaning aggressively, you've got to get it out of the system somehow, right? And it's better to get it out of your system on something else rather than on each other. Because that could have happened as well in some relationships, couldn't it? And your personalities could be very different. You both sound as if you're quite the same, but if you had different personalities, totally different personalities, it could have gone either way. And which is why we see so many instances of, families and family violence. And that's come up because we don't know how to handle it. And I wonder, after all that cleaning aggressively and that long walk, whether or not you took the time, I'm sure you did, to say sorry and then to make some time for yourselves. And that conversation will continue with Simon and Lillian Xiao. Thank you for staying with us here on Family Ties. I'm still speaking with Simon and Lillian Xiao. You both sound as if you're quite the same sort of personality. Is that true? It comes across this way.
Mostly, I think we have quite a lot of common interests, but I think she would describe herself as an introvert. I'm more of an extrovert. But we are not polar opposites, maybe.
Okay. So for couples who may have very different types of personalities and different ways of approaching, for example, you said you had a big fight, not too long ago. And there are some who may not have done what you did. Now, what would you say to couples who aren't same, but different?
I think a lot of times we feel like we want to change the other person, or we just want to get our way. So I think I would say learn to put the other person first, or try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And sometimes I know in the midst of an argument or when you're upset, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
But I think we believe that if this marriage is important to us and it's something that we treasure, we want to keep that commitment to each other, then we need to put ourselves aside and work towards that the relationship growing and continuing, even though it's hard. Yeah.
And not to take each other for granted. I think sometimes we do that. We take our children for granted too. We take our parents for granted, right? We take all the people around us for granted, thinking, oh, they'll still be there tomorrow. Let's talk about it then. And then sometimes, I should have done this yesterday. How do you both remember that 1970 movie with Ali McGraw and Ryan O'Neal, Love Story? Remember the line from that story? Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Oh, we don't agree with that.
Yeah, I know you won't agree with that, and I think many people don't today agree with that. I think love means having the courage to say you're sorry and then mend, resolve, and then move on. So let's talk about that. We want to talk about things like gratitude and being sorry for something that has happened. You may not agree, but you must talk through that, and also to be able to take time to recharge self and recharge each other. Simon.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that I've been learning of late, that I have to learn start with myself. And that's one of the things I would suggest, for others, for listeners also, that we need to embrace your humanity and also that of your spouse. So I need to recognize I'm going to lose it and I won't get it all right. And to extend myself, lots of grace, and then to offer that generously to your spouse and family too, right? And what that means practically is I got to be patient with myself. I'm going to feel frustrated. I'm going to feel cooped up. I'm human, it's normal. And we're all experiencing grief and loss, as I mentioned earlier, but we may not know it. So this is a piece that I feel like it's key. And as you put it correctly, being willing to say, because of my humanity, I'm sorry, I messed up, I lost my cool. Will you forgive me?
Yeah, and Simon is really good at that, at taking the initiative to say he's sorry. I think the challenges in any relationship is to be the first one to say you're sorry, because sometimes you feel like you're not the one in the wrong. Yeah, but we've learned that in order for our relationship to work, we both have to do that. I know sometimes I wait for him to do it, but I think I also have to take responsibility if I want this marriage to work, to say I'm sorry for the part that I may have contributed to this conflict, and be willing to be humble and even though I may still not think it's my fault, but I'm willing to say I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Can we talk about this, and can we be better? Can we grow? Love each other more.
And having an understanding of each other then becomes important, because you've often heard people say, you know what, I'll marry him first and then I'll change him. Or her, all right, the other way. But, that very rarely happens, and you kind of don't want to go into a relationship like that. So having that understanding, because we each have different backgrounds, don't we? We each come from a different space, sometimes in time even. And so because of that, I think we do need to understand. And by the same token, we've got to understand our children too. They may come from us, but they're still different, and you do want them to be individuals as well. Now, you talked about leaving the house and taking this long walk. So let's talk a few minutes about this, about supporting each other in what you do. And you do that through the work that you do already. You do it together, and you've known each other for such a long time and been married for 24 years of that time. And you obviously make time, and you use the word intentional several times, and we talk about things like that: intentional parenting, intentional everything. If we don't make the time, we'll never find the time. Someone said that to me. You can't find the time. You got to make it. And I didn't understand that at first. And I said, oh yeah, okay. When it comes to the children, how come we can't put them in our schedule, in our appointment books like we do our clients? We do that with our clients, don't we? So why can't we do that the same for our children and our spouses? So supporting each other and making time for one another for self-care. How important is recharging yourself so that you can recharge your marriage?
So I just grabbed from my computer this little post-it that my wife has put on my computer. It says, what are 2 self-care things you have this week? And I paste it, just right on my screen, because this is something that she's learned for some years now, and she reminds me, because sometimes I get into my work, and I forget that I really do need to take care of my own growth and my own well-being. So yeah, I just thought as you mentioned about the self-care, this came to me, but this is key. Yeah.
So what have you got planned? Just name one thing that you're going to do this week?
Well,
for self-care.
We're looking forward to our mini staycation tomorrow.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
We've had a busy month, and then we just are gonna just pull away, and spend a night out from the home and just be with each other, have moments when we can have conversations and do a bit of journaling, read a book, or just hang out.
And that's it. Sometimes that's all we need, just to hang out and to take a night away from the mundane, the usual, the children, the life, yeah? And just make that time. So kudos and have a fabulous time, together during your mini staycation. Very often we're consumed by work. I think we're consumed by life, and life has taken a turn over the last 7 to 8 months and will continue to perhaps be different and difficult for many of us. And Simon, I don't know when you're ever going to get on a plane again, for work, but you've got to find a way to break out of this cabin fever, and maybe several mini staycations might be the way to go. And so as we wrap our conversation, just this one last question. Growing your marriage in times of stress is possible, isn't it? Lillian?
Yes, I think so. I think it's really in stress that you show your true character and the strength of your marriage also, and your relationship. But I believe that, it's during the stress where you can be the greatest support to each other. And I would encourage everyone to just have the courage to communicate. Sometimes it's really just about the communication, and sharing with each other about your stress, what you're going through, what you're experiencing, either from yourself or from, your spouse. And as you said, Susan, intentionally making time to have that important conversation with each other, and learning to understand each other. Not trying to change the other person, but learning to understand, and then asking yourself the question, like, how can I help you be better? Like Simon will always ask me, how do you rate our marriage this week, and what can I do to make that rating go up? So I think that's the heart of it. Like, how do you want to put in your part to grow that relationship? Yeah,
and that's important. Growing a relationship in times of stress or otherwise, and if all else fails, take a walk and clean aggressively. Maybe we'll be able to clear up whatever it is we need to clear up in our own lives as well. And I thank you both very much for coming on to share your personal stories and your innermost secrets with us here today.
Yeah, and the aggressive cleaning. Right?
Oh, the aggressive cleaning. That came from your children. Boy. Wow. Okay. And I hope you have a fabulous staycation together and get to know each other again. And I wish you many, many more 24 years together.
Thank
you
so
very much. Simon and Lillian Xiao talking to me today. And you can get more information and resources on families, on parenting, on marriage at www.families.com.